The People's Liberation Army of China played a crucial and transformative role in the Korean War, significantly shaping the conflict's trajectory and its eventual outcome. The PLA's involvement marked a pivotal moment in Chinese military history and had profound implications for regional and global geopolitics. This comprehensive analysis will explore the PLA's strategic motivations, operational dynamics, key battles, and the broader impact of its participation in the Korean War. The Chinese intervention in the Korean War was driven by a confluence of strategic, ideological, and security considerations. Following the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the Chinese leadership, led by Mao Zedong, was keen on consolidating its power and safeguarding the nascent communist state from perceived external threats. The outbreak of the Korean War in June 1950, when North Korean forces invaded South Korea, quickly escalated into a broader conflict involving the United States and its allies under the banner of the United Nations. China's primary strategic motivation for intervening in the Korean War was to prevent a potential threat to its own security. The rapid advance of United Nations forces, led by the United States towards the Yalu River, which forms the border between North Korea and China, raised alarm bells in Beijing. Chinese leaders feared that the presence of hostile forces so close to their border could lead to an invasion of Chinese territory or the establishment of a pro-Western regime in North Korea. Such an outcome would have posed a significant strategic threat to China. Ideological considerations played a crucial role in China's decision to intervene. The Chinese Communist Party sought to demonstrate its commitment to the global communist movement and its solidarity with fellow socialist states. By supporting North Korea, China aimed to bolster its credentials as a leading communist power and counter the influence of the United States and its allies in East Asia. The PLA's entry into the Korean War marked a dramatic shift in the conflict's dynamics. In October 1950, under the command of General Peng Dehuai, the Chinese People's Volunteer Army crossed the Yalu River into North Korea. The term volunteer was used to obscure the direct involvement of the PLA and mitigate potential international repercussions. The PVA, composed primarily of experienced PLA troops, was well prepared for the harsh conditions of the Korean Peninsula. The initial phase of the Chinese intervention was characterized by a series of surprise attacks and ambushes against United Nations forces. The Chinese forces employed tactics that emphasized stealth, mobility, and nighttime operations, exploiting their familiarity with the rugged terrain and harsh weather conditions. The PLA's ability to launch large-scale offensives under the cover of darkness and their skill in conducting ambushes and encirclements caught the United Nations forces off guard. One of the most significant battles during this phase was the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir in late 1950. Chinese forces, taking advantage of their numerical superiority and tactical acumen, launched a massive assault on the United Nations forces, primarily composed of U.S. Marines. Despite facing harsh winter conditions and logistical challenges, the Chinese troops inflicted heavy casualties on the United Nations forces and forced them to retreat southward. This battle demonstrated the PLA's ability to adapt to difficult combat environments and achieve strategic objectives through sheer determination and resilience. The PLA's involvement in the Korean War was marked by several key battles and campaigns that significantly influenced the course of the conflict. In addition to the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, other notable engagements include the Battle of the Pusan Perimeter, the Battle of Incheon, and the various phases of the Chinese Spring Offensive. The Battle of the Pusan Perimeter, which took place in the early months of the war, was a crucial defensive action by United Nations forces to hold a small enclave in southeastern Korea against overwhelming North Korean advances. The Chinese intervention later helped stabilize the situation, preventing a complete collapse of the North Korean front and allowing for a counteroffensive. The Battle of Incheon, a daring amphibious assault led by General Douglas MacArthur, successfully recaptured Seoul and forced North Korean forces to retreat. However, the subsequent advance towards the Yalu River prompted China's intervention, which ultimately led to a protracted and bloody stalemate. The Chinese Spring Offensive, launched in 1951, aimed to push United Nations forces further south and regain lost territory. Despite initial successes, the offensive eventually stalled due to logistical challenges and fierce resistance from United Nations forces. The subsequent United Nations counteroffensive further underscored the intense and fluctuating nature of the conflict. The PLA's intervention in the Korean War had far-reaching implications for both China and the broader international community. Domestically, the war solidified the Chinese Communist Party's control over China and enhanced the PLA's reputation as a formidable fighting force. The experience gained during the Korean War would later inform Chinese military doctrine and strategy in subsequent conflicts, such as the Sino-Indian War of 1962 and the Sino-Vietnamese War of 1970 and Vietnamese War of 1979. On the international stage, the Korean War significantly altered the geopolitical landscape of East Asia. The Chinese intervention prevented the complete collapse of North Korea and ensured the survival of the communist regime in Pyongyang. This outcome solidified the division of the Korean Peninsula along the 38th parallel, a division that persists to this day. The war also marked the beginning of a prolonged and often contentious relationship between China and the United States, shaping the contours of the Cold War in Asia. The PLA's involvement in the Korean War also had a profound impact on China's relations with the Soviet Union. While the two countries initially cooperated in supporting North Korea, differing strategic interests and ideological disputes eventually led to a deterioration of Sino-Soviet relations. This rift would become more pronounced in the following decades, influencing global communist movements and the broader Cold War dynamics. The Korean War underscored the importance of military modernization and the need for a robust defense industry in China. The PLA's experiences in the conflict highlighted the limitations of relying on human wave tactics and underscored the necessity of modernizing China's armed forces. In the years following the war, China undertook significant efforts to develop its military capabilities, including the acquisition of advanced weaponry and the establishment of a more professional and technologically sophisticated military force. The PLA's participation in the Korean War also had significant social and political implications within China. The war effort required a massive mobilization of resources and manpower, which in turn fostered a sense of national unity and purpose. The Chinese government used the war as a means to promote patriotic fervor and strengthen the Chinese Communist Party's legitimacy. The war also served as a crucible for the PLA, testing and refining its organizational structure, command systems, and logistical capabilities. In terms of military strategy and tactics, the Korean War provided the PLA with valuable combat experience and lessons that would shape its future development. The PLA's ability to conduct large-scale conventional warfare, combined with guerrilla tactics honed during the Chinese Civil War, proved effective in countering the technologically superior but less adaptable United Nations forces. The war also emphasized the importance of strategic depth and the ability to sustain protracted conflicts, principles that would become central to Chinese military doctrine. The Korean War's legacy also had lasting effects on China's foreign policy and its approach to international relations. The war marked China's emergence as a significant player on the global stage, capable of influencing regional dynamics and challenging the interests of major powers like the United States. China's willingness to intervene militarily in Korea signaled its readiness to assert its interests and defend its allies, a stance that would be evident in its subsequent support for revolutionary movements and anti-colonial struggles worldwide. Moreover, the war highlighted the strategic importance of alliances and the need for China to cultivate and maintain strong relationships with other socialist states. While the Sino-Soviet alliance ultimately frayed, the Korean War demonstrated the potential benefits of coordinated action among communist countries. This understanding influenced China's foreign policy in the following decades as it sought to balance its relationships with the Soviet Union, other socialist states, and emerging non-aligned countries. The Korean War also had a profound psychological impact on the Chinese leadership and population. The conflict underscored the harsh realities of modern warfare and the significant human and material costs involved. The war's devastation and the heavy casualties suffered by Chinese forces reinforced the importance of military preparedness and the need to avoid direct confrontation with technologically superior adversaries whenever possible. In the broader context of the Cold War, the PA's involvement in the Korean War contributed to the global ideological struggle between communism and capitalism. The war served as a proxy battleground for the competing ideologies, with China and the Soviet Union supporting North Korea and the United States and its allies backing South Korea. The conflict further entrenched the division between the Eastern and Western blocs and set the stage for future confrontations in other parts of the world. The Korean War also had significant implications for the Korean peninsula itself. The intervention of Chinese forces prevented the unification of Korea under a single government, solidifying the division between North and South Korea. This division created a long-standing and deeply entrenched geopolitical fault line in East Asia, with significant implications for regional stability and international relations. The presence of a hostile and militarized border between the two Koreas remains a source of tension and potential conflict to this day. The PLA's participation in the Korean War also had lasting effects on the development of the North Korean military and state. The close cooperation between Chinese and North Korean forces during the war fostered a strong military and political alliance that has endured for decades. North Korea's military strategies, organizational structures, and tactics were heavily influenced by the PLA's experience and guidance. This influence is evident in North Korea's emphasis on self-reliance, military-first policies, and the development of asymmetric warfare capabilities. The Korean War fundamentally altered the PLA's approach to military training and education. The experiences gained from combat operations against a technologically superior adversary like the United States forced the PLA to reevaluate its training methods and doctrine. The importance of discipline, adaptability, and innovation became more pronounced in PLA training programs. The need for a well-rounded, professionally trained officer corps was also recognized, leading to the establishment of more rigorous military academies and training institutions. In terms of military technology, the Korean War highlighted the gaps between the PLA and its adversaries. The conflict underscored the need for advancements in communications, logistics, and weaponry. In response, China initiated efforts to acquire and develop more advanced military technology, often with assistance from the Soviet Union before relations soured. This period saw the beginning of China's push towards self-sufficiency in defense technology, laying the groundwork for future advancements. The war also had economic implications for China. The resources and manpower diverted to the war effort strained the Chinese economy, which was already recovering from years of civil conflict. The necessity of sustaining a prolonged war effort highlighted the importance of economic resilience and self-reliance. These lessons would influence China's economic policies in the subsequent decades, emphasizing the need for a stable and self-sustaining industrial base capable of supporting military needs. The impact of the Korean War on Chinese society was multifaceted. The war fostered a sense of national pride and unity, as the Chinese people rallied behind the government and the PLA. Propaganda campaigns highlighted the heroism and sacrifices of Chinese soldiers, bolstering the Chinese Communist Party's legitimacy. The war also served as a catalyst for social reforms, as the government sought to mobilize and organize the populace more effectively. This period saw increased efforts to improve literacy, public health, and social welfare, aimed at creating a more cohesive and resilient society. The Korean War's influence extended to China's cultural and intellectual spheres as well. The conflict and its outcomes were widely covered in Chinese media, literature, and art, shaping public perceptions and narratives about the war. The portrayal of the war in these mediums reinforced the themes of patriotism, sacrifice, and the righteousness of the Chinese cause. The war also influenced academic and military studies, as scholars and strategists analyzed the conflict to draw lessons for future engagements. The psychological impact of the war on Chinese soldiers and veterans was significant. Many soldiers experienced the horrors of modern warfare firsthand, which left lasting scars. The government recognized the importance of addressing the needs of veterans, leading to the establishment of programs aimed at providing medical care, financial support, and social reintegration. The experiences of these veterans also contributed to a deeper understanding of the human cost of war within Chinese society. Internationally, the Korean War solidified China's position as a key player in global affairs. The war demonstrated China's willingness and ability to project military power beyond its borders, challenging the dominance of the United States and its allies in East Asia. This newfound status influenced China's foreign policy for decades as it sought to navigate the complexities of the Cold War and assert its influence in the developing world. China's participation in the war also strengthened its ties with other communist and non-aligned nations, as it positioned itself as a leader in the global struggle against imperialism and colonialism. The Korean War also had lasting effects on the military strategies and doctrines of other countries. The conflict provided valuable lessons for the United States and its allies, highlighting the challenges of conducting military operations in difficult terrain and against a determined adversary. The war underscored the importance of joint operations, close air support, and effective logistics. These lessons would shape U.S. military strategies in subsequent conflicts, including the Vietnam War. For the Soviet Union, the Korean War demonstrated the limitations of its indirect approach to supporting communist movements. While the Soviets provided significant material and logistical support to North Korea and China, their reluctance to become directly involved in the conflict revealed the constraints imposed by the nuclear balance of power. The war also highlighted the importance of maintaining strong alliances and coordinating efforts with other communist states, despite ideological and strategic differences. The Korean War's legacy continues to influence regional dynamics in East Asia. The division of the Korean Peninsula remains one of the most significant and enduring legacies of the conflict. The Armistice Agreement signed in 1953, which ended active hostilities but did not result in a formal peace treaty, left the Korean Peninsula in a state of suspended conflict. The demilitarized zone separating North and South Korea is one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world, symbolizing the unresolved tensions and the potential for renewed conflict. The war also cemented the alliances and rivalries that continue to shape East Asian geopolitics. The United States' commitment to the defense of South Korea and its broader strategy of containing communist influence in the region were solidified by the Korean War. This commitment has persisted through various administrations influencing U.S. military presence and policy in East Asia. For China, the war reinforced the importance of maintaining a buffer state in North Korea. The strategic value of having a friendly regime on its northeastern border has continued to influence China's policies towards North Korea, leading to a complex and often contentious relationship. China's support for North Korea has been driven by a combination of historical ties, strategic considerations, and the desire to prevent instability on its border. The Korean War also had implications for Japan, which played a significant role as a base of operations and logistical support for United Nations forces. The conflict accelerated Japan's post-war recovery and economic growth, as the country benefited from the demand for goods and services generated by the war effort. The war also influenced Japan's security policies and its relationship with the United States, leading to the establishment of a long-term security alliance. The Korean War's impact on the international order extended beyond East Asia. The conflict set a precedent for United Nations military interventions, establishing the framework for collective security efforts under the UN Charter. The war also influenced the development of international humanitarian law and the treatment of prisoners of war, as the experiences and challenges faced during the conflict highlighted the need for clearer regulations and protections. In conclusion, the PI's involvement in the Korean War was a defining moment in Chinese military and political history. Driven by a combination of strategic, ideological, and security considerations, China's intervention played a crucial role in shaping the outcome of the conflict and the subsequent geopolitical landscape of East Asia. The experiences and lessons learned by the PLA during the Korean War had a lasting impact on China's military doctrine, foreign policy, and domestic development. The war's legacy continues to influence China's strategic thinking and its role in regional and global affairs. The Korean War also had profound implications for the broader international community, shaping the dynamics of the Cold War and influencing the policies and strategies of major powers. The enduring legacy of the Korean War underscores the complex and far-reaching consequences of this pivotal conflict in modern history.